As the jingle goes, good things grow in Ontario. As it turns out, good things are made in Ontario too. Maybe you drove to work in an Ontario-made car today. When you stop to blow your nose, 'tis the season, right? You may have used a tissue made right here in Ontario. And as you sat in your office chair, hey, guess what? Eastern Ontario makes furniture too. From planes and trains to boats, from concrete to cables, and from cameras to screens, here's some of the stuff made and built in Eastern Ontario. Welcome to a very special edition of the Eastern Ontario Business Journal podcast. Aren't they all? I'm your host, Phil Gaudreau. If you like this show, make sure to like and subscribe to be notified when new episodes are available. Today, we're doing a deeper dive on the stuff made and built in Eastern Ontario, hot on the heels of the recently released magazine. It's the 4th edition of Stuff. You can learn more about this year's edition at stuffmadeandbuilt.ca or watch for a copy near you. We've sent out thousands of copies to schools, employment centers, and participants in the magazine, and you might even see a couple of articles written by yours truly. Just saying. If you're thinking, wow, jobs in manufacturing, kids need to hear about this, I have some good news for you. This year, we've produced a student activity guide that's also available at stuffmadeandbuilt.ca. Go check that out. So to talk about manufacturing today, we're welcoming on 3 guests. JP Giroux is president of the Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium, EMC. Hi, JP.
Good morning, Phil.
Patrick Tallon is president and CEO of Tulmar Safety Systems in beautiful Hawkesbury. Good to see you again, Pat.
Hello, Phil. Good to see you.
And finally, Daniel Liao joins us. He's Dean of Applied Science, Technology, and Trades at St. Lawrence College. Hello, Daniel.
Hi, Phil. It's great to be here.
Let's start with you, JP. Tell us a bit about what your organization does, and I want you to tell us what your favorite made in Ontario product is.
Excellent, Phil. I'll save my favorite product for the last, but EMC was founded in Ontario by Owen Sound and Georgian Bay. And now we are across Canada operating where manufacturers are, about 60 different regions from coast to coast, and doing peer-to-peer review, benchmarking, and solving problems that manufacturing are facing. All aspects of problems, from production to HR, and we'll be talking about HR, but engineering, immigration is a big conversation right now. So we're a membership-based organization, industry-led, and we also do programming. We have a learning center that is very active and addressing solution on the skills gap. We have an energy program who are basically regrouping a consortium of company to do a buying group, and as well we do health and safety programming, and we also do initiatives addressing different issues that manufacturing are facing, from advanced manufacturing to labor shortages to skills gap. And on my favorite product from Ontario made.
This is always fun question to ask member-based organizations, because it's like asking, what's your favorite child, right? But
here we go, Phil. I have 2 answers for you. One that is an impact for the province, generating jobs and wealth, and it's focused on the transportation sector. So I'll say plane, trains, and automobiles. That's I think the cornerstone of Ontario economy, from a parts perspective, from an assembly line perspective. But for me personally, I would say the wine that we're producing around Niagara Lake, as well as Petty Island. I mean, winemakers are extremely dynamic in Ontario, and they're selling their product all over the world. So here we go.
All right, marketing opportunity for any of our listeners based in the Prince Edward County region, right near me, but we'll save that for another time. Pat, aside from safety being your middle name, maybe you can tell us a bit more about Tulmar Safety Systems, and I also want to know what your favorite made in Ontario product is.
Yeah, thank you for having me on here today, Phil. Based in Hawkesbury, Ontario, we've been in business for over 30 years. We serve 2 primary markets, first being military, secondary being aviation. Our products protect people and equipment, and you think of things like seat belts, life rafts, life jackets, containment systems, bags, covers, you kind of name it. If it's made with a variety of fabrics or inflatable, then it's something that's manufactured in our plant. So we're very fortunate. We're blessed to have a wide range of products. As far as my favorite product, I'm going to maybe pick two, if I may. One would be the Tulmar Hammerhead, which is a very specific life jacket used by special forces around the world. Soon to be actually replaced, Phil, by the Tulmar Liao, which is a smaller version, but providing the same type of protection that special forces operators need around the world. The secondary one would be the Tulmar Baby Bassinet, which is a bassinet that holds a child up to 20 pounds. It attaches to the bulkhead of a multi-aisled aircraft and helps parents make long-distance flight and have an infant sleeping there. So those would be my two favorite Tulmar products. I think as far as Canadian products or Ontario products specifically, I think the iconic de Havilland Dash 8 is something we all should be proud of. You know, it's really opened up markets and created jobs and an environment around the province that's supported by companies like ours. And I think I'd be remiss, maybe I'm sort of going into four products now here, Phil, so forgive me, but a local product made here right in Champlain Township is Beau's Lug Tread, and it's a fantastic brewery, and it's one of my favorite products. So if you guys have put a plug in for Ontario wine, I'm going to put a plug in for Beau's Lug Tread.
Fair enough. And, you know, I have a bit of a inside track because we spoke for Stuff Magazine, so I got to learn a little bit about your company and products made here in Hawkesbury in Eastern Ontario and going literally around the world. So so kudos to you.
Thank you.
And Daniel, could you tell us a bit about the trades and manufacturing programs that St. Lawrence College offers, and which you are, of course, Dean in charge of? And, of course, I also want to know what your favorite made in Ontario product is.
Yeah, sure, Phil. So St. Lawrence College, we have about 10 programs in the Faculty of Applied Science, Technology, and Trades that lead to jobs in manufacturing, and these programs are offered at both the Kingston and Cornwall campuses. Some of these examples include mechanical technician, instrumentation control engineering, technology, general machinist apprenticeship, welding and fabrication technician. The last one is offered at Cornwall, while the other ones are in Kingston campus. So there are other programs too that are not in my program portfolio, such as supply chain management, that's in business, and that's, you know, has also a manufacturing and logistics focus. The changing landscape is quite evident in recent years, and I would say it's really dominated by the shortages in industry and really the vacancies in manufacturing that is outpacing the increase in enrollment in these skill trades programs that I just mentioned. I think year after year we have more employers reaching out to us to inquire about you know, our graduates, when they're graduating, essentially clamoring for our students and trying to get leads on how, you know, we can help them with their talent pipeline. And we've actually realized some quite successful partnerships coming out of their needs and what we can assist with. And, you know, my favorite Ontario product, I have to say, actually there's two of them. I would say cars and healthcare and medical devices. So, you know, I think the auto industry, as JP mentioned, is one of the cornerstones of Ontario's economy. And, you know, sometimes it's not really associated with Eastern Ontario, but what you have to realize is the auto industry has such a wide network of suppliers, right? You have kind of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and so forth. And what we do have in Eastern Ontario are some of the tiers that supply the OEMs. And a good example, Napanee has Goodyear, tire plant there, and when we work very closely with them, training their apprentices. And then in Brockville, you have on the healthcare side, you have 3M that I don't know if many people know about this, but at the start of the pandemic, they were cranking out respirators, N95 masks, and then there's also Trillium Health Products in Brockville, also making over-the-counter medication, right, to treat the symptoms. So big contributions with the products, you know, that is manufactured in Eastern Ontario, and those two are kind of my favorites.
Yeah, and to your point too, supply chains are complicated, right? You get into those professionals that need to manage moving the parts along and getting the products to the people. So it's more than just manufacturing. But I want to pick at a thread that you all started talking about, which was hiring, because that is a big component of Stuff Magazine. So we'll start with you, JP. Your organization has some training programs, credits, a very interesting upcoming international recruiting mission, might I add, to help manufacturing employers who are hiring. Could you tell us about the uptake and the demand you're seeing for these programs from your membership?
Absolutely, Phil. First, at EMC, we believe to go as early as possible to get the new generation involved and engaged in manufacturing. That's been a priority, I would say, in the last 2-3 years, even before COVID, where we've seen labor shortages being number one issue in manufacturing, and I could extend this to the entire economy of Canada. School to work transition is very much on our radar. We started 2 years ago with work integrated learning and trying to bring students in a co-op fashion in manufacturing, and not just large size manufacturers, including and targeting small and medium-sized business. So since the last 2 years, we have placed more than 2,000 students just in Ontario. That's represent more than $12 million of investment. These are wage subsidy that we provide. So this was very groundbreaking for us in a sense that we say we can do much more, obviously, and get earlier the students involved. So we did a pilot last year with school boards and targeting high schools students as well as high school graduates. There is hundreds and now thousands in Eastern Ontario. That's 100 of these students that are involved in the high skill major program. So the transition for them, and they're all focusing on manufacturing it, and the connectivity with the employers is not necessarily there. So we did that bridge, and the employer really showed up to the party, and these pilots were very successful. So now we're continuing on that road, and so to continue with building more bridges, making manufacturing on the radar in Eastern Ontario, but also all across the Ontario. Doing this as well with graduates that are finishing their program. We know, for example, like high school students, when they graduate, about 40 to 50% will go to the labor force, and the other 50% will continue to college and university. So we want to make that connection to these graduates so they can get jobs that are full-time jobs with benefit and provide obviously option for manufacturers. And so we'll continue to do this in the coming years. That's now part of our even business plan to look at the future of manufacturing.
Mm-hmm. Maybe just switch gears a little bit and talk to an employer for a moment. Pat, when we spoke a few months back for the magazine, you mentioned you've been able to retain much of your staff through COVID. I'd love if you could walk us through how things are looking today with global airline traffic recovering, everything getting a lot busier, and what has that meant for your business in keeping up with that volume?
Yeah, so thank you. Great question, Phil. We've seen the airline business obviously come roaring back. We've started to fill orders for training products, the baby bassinet, which I mentioned is one of my favorite products, as families are starting to fly more, than there's demand for those products. And we're also seeing our military business increase, with the commitment that the NATO allies are making to things like Arctic sovereignty and security in Europe. We're seeing demand for current projects and new projects coming on board. And we see that really driving demand in our business. So we feel that we need to add about 20% more employees over the next couple of years. And as you've said, this is an issue that presents itself for us. So we're working with foreign recruiters. We're working with Contact here in Hawkesbury to help us find people that are interested in emigrating to Canada. We're working actually with CFP Kingston and CFP Petawawa, and we're going to be running a couple of job fairs coming up early in the new year to see if there's members that are about to retire and that would have skills that would fit into our business join our business. And of course, we're working with local high schools, and those 40 to 50% of kids that are coming into the workforce that JP mentioned, are they interested in joining Tulmar? In fact, I was going to the parking lot yesterday and I was stopped by a young gentleman who's returning to the area, a local graduate, went to do construction in Atlantic Canada, wants to move back to Eastern Ontario, and was quite excited to hear about the career opportunities that we presented at Tulmar. So I was glad to speak to this young gentleman, and hopefully he joins our workforce, and hopefully he brings his skill and enthusiasm to the workplace. So a lot of different ways that we're looking at recruiting, both locally, internationally, and then tapping into a group of veterans across Eastern Ontario that have the skill set and the expertise to support our business.
Kicking it old school, instead of applying at the online applicant tracking system or whatever, it's chasing down the CEO in the parking lot.
Hey, listen,
love the hustle.
It was awesome. And the fact he asked me what I did here, and I said, well, I'm one of the owners and I'm happy with the CEO. And he didn't back down. So he asked me about our business, how I get in touch with me, asked me for a business card. Like, that's the kind of moxie that I'm looking for, right? And I was really pleased to talk to this gentleman.
Daniel, we've been hearing for years, this mass exodus of retirees in the trades and manufacturing. There's not enough young people entering. There's shortages. You alluded to some of those talking points earlier. What sort of arguments have you seen that work in convincing young learners to study in the trades, to look at manufacturing? And is it training at this point that is the gap? We're not training enough, or is there also a retention issue once they reach industry?
Yeah, so Phil, I think it's less arguments and more show and tell. And I think the tours will help with the young learners, getting young learners into the sector. The tours, I think, help with breaking misconceptions and stigma, right? Manufacturing is no longer dirty. It's no longer very manual. It actually uses a lot of technology, and manufacturing plants these days are clean, they're brightly lit, they're safe, and they're highly automated. And giving tours to youth of manufacturing facilities and the labs, like at St. Lawrence College, where they do a lot of that training, which kind of reflects what people see in industry. I think this really helps the public and prospective students better understand what manufacturing is about nowadays. Recruitment, I think, is still a challenge in the sector. I think your question to which is a bigger gap, is it retention or is it recruiting? I don't think retention is any worse than any other sector or profession, manufacturing versus any other sector. Recruitment, yeah, it suffers from some of the stigma, but I think we're moving the needle on that. From a public policy perspective, as well as outreach. Colleges are doing more outreach. The government is emphasizing the skilled trades as a career, more so these days than ever before. So a lot of momentum. But again, it's still the fact that a lot of people are exiting because of they're approaching retirement age, right? For example, like a welder in Canada, the average age of a welder in Canada is 59, right? But what that really means is someone who's looking to enter the trade, there's a lot of opportunities. There's just shortages in everything. So like someone who is coming out of a program at St. Lawrence College, the 2-year welding and fabrication program, they have complete control over their careers. They can do just about anything they want to, because there's just so many areas they can go into welding. Whether it's healthcare or aviation, they have different processes that they would be welding with. It's a little bit more TIG in both sectors, and other types of manufacturing a little bit more MIG, but a lot of need for welders. And you're in the driver's seat of a career if you do a program in welding at a college. So I think I don't think retention is an issue. Recruitment, we can definitely work together with industry, with employers to draw more students, break some misconceptions, and the stigma as well.
Yeah, and I think to your point, if they're well versed in what to expect, they tour the place, they see what the work is like, then there shouldn't be a retention issue. They should look at it and kind of go, okay, this is exactly what I was expected. This is exactly what I was prepared for. So Good to hear that. I also want to take a look at onshoring in our last section here and how we rebuild our manufacturing capacity here in Ontario and augment it, of course, because we've got some folks right here doing some of that work. Pat, you mentioned some of the restrictions when we spoke for the Stuff article that are on your supply chain because of sensitivities of clients such as the military. Would you say those constraints have actually been helpful in terms of building your business and the business of your suppliers here in Canada?
Yes and no. So those constraints still provide issues for us as far as long lead times, right? So, customers are a need for something and it may take me 40 weeks to get components. It's very specific to products that we order, and I'm limited in the fact that sometimes we only have 1 or 2 different suppliers that can produce that. So it doesn't create a lot of leverage for me as a buyer, as a manufacturer. We are seeing, more protectionism in the United States, which is good and bad at times for us, and it sort of makes us wonder about how we can go to market in the United States. And we continue to see a little bit more awareness towards some products that are manufactured in Ontario. So for example, we make an inflatable shelter, and we compete against a firm in Florida. And as soon as people find out, first responders, for example, find out that it's made in Ontario, they're quick to discuss this with us. So we see that definitely being an advantage. And even something as simple as when the pandemic hit, we pivoted and started to make face shields for medical applications, and we continue to fulfill orders for medical face shields at hospitals in Eastern Ontario. So where there was a shortage of medical grade vinyl in March of 2020, there was an abundance of aviation vinyl. So we've got a pretty heavy duty face shield that in fact becomes reusable and continues to be used by hospitals in our area. So a little bit of both, Phil. I see the good and the bad as far as onshoring, nearshoring, and the challenges that remain in supply chain.
JP, I want to turn to you for a second and to ask you a bit about the training that you folks offer that has seen the greatest demand, and if you've got some new offerings that are coming down the pipe to respond to those demands.
Absolutely. We're on a mission at EMC to establish standards and certification. There's very little certification in manufacturing. It's an industry where it's not regulated as a job. So there's a lot of opportunity with obviously partnership with colleges as well. But what we're seeing is a lot of micro credential right now that are being produced, where we're doing some on and we call them the foundational micro credentials. So this is for high school student as well as college and university, to give them the foundation to understand the sector and what are the skills that are required to function. We also are deploying and actively, and hundreds are being certified, production workers and supervisors being certified on manufacturing essential certification. So these are the skills that are required to function as a supervisor, as a machine operator in manufacturing, and that include foundational skills like problem solving, continuous improvement, but also the soft skills that we like to say, the skills for success, like collaboration, adaptability, creativity, that are super important at all levels, from shop floor to CEO level. Lean manufacturing is obviously coming back with the conversation around adopting new technology, advanced manufacturing. So first thing you have to do is you have to be lean. You have to understand your own process in order to welcome automation, robotic, digitalization. So everything related to, and that requires also project management. We're seeing a lot of interest and needs from industry. Everything is being managed as a project in a manufacturing plant. Big projects, small projects, you need project management skills. And really that's summarized. But the type of things we're also seeing a lot of, and we're developing programming on psychological health to help. You're talking about retention earlier. That's an ongoing issue. So for employer to better understand on how to deal with diversity, with mental health, that's another big stream of activity, and we're trying to tackle this one with training. And you mentioned earlier immigration. For us, if we're going to tackle that labor shortage in Ontario, it's well documented that's going to come from the youth, the new generation, and the immigration. So providing the tools for firms to navigate to the immigration, from recruitment, selection of new immigrant to the process of immigration, as well to the integration of these new worker in the community. That's also on our radar.
I'm glad you said that that last part too, because it's not just about getting them here and getting a few months of work out while their temporary foreign worker permit is valid and such. It's how do we convince them to stay, and how do we make that appealing to them? So glad you said that. And Daniel, if we are going to try and onshore, then it follows that we need not just manufacturing doers, but also leaders, people ready to take 3D printing and turn a company around using those kinds of technologies. So how is the curriculum at St. Lawrence College also preparing learners for jobs not just as doers, as I said, but company leaders and founders?
Yeah, so Phil, I say that a post-secondary program at a college, especially St. Lawrence College, in skilled trades, really lays the groundwork for future leaders and entrepreneurs. So a 2-year program, one of the programs that I mentioned earlier, it contains communication courses, right? That's mandatory. And then most programs also offer a course called Topics in the Contemporary Workplace, and covers off some of the skills that JP just mentioned, that is built into some of his programs. And, the soft skills like communication, problem solving, those are really sought after, by industry, aside from the technical skills. And it's something that will lead to eventual progress for the individual through their career. But we do it within our program, plant the seed and cultivate that skill set at that point. I would also say that what we're increasingly seeing is more mature students, especially those with even university backgrounds, enter our trades programs, and they're uniquely positioned too to be future leaders as well, because they come with life experience, sometimes in another sector, unrelated sector entirely, and they're kind of launching themselves into a totally different career path. Not to say that our programs don't prepare our students who don't come with that background with such skills to succeed. Our graduates are all well-rounded, I would say. So initially, they will make great team members and individual contributors, and then see them morph into a leader or supervisor, further down the road in their careers. And it is happening. I mean, we see it on their LinkedIn profiles. I'm really proud of them, right? When we see them get promoted and so forth. So I mean, a college education is a great way to get into manufacturing, and with some perseverance, afterwards you find yourself in a leadership position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had the privilege of interviewing one of your Premier's Awards nominees previously, who started up a business manufacturing fishing lures in Kingston too. So I know you've got the entrepreneurial student supports and all that within the college organization. I taught at St. Lawrence earlier this year, so a bit of inside baseball on some of that. But I know you guys are doing great work, so thank you for that. Any parting thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with about manufacturing and some of the stuff made and built in Eastern Ontario? JP, I'll pick on you first.
Well, it was mentioned earlier, manufacturing is no longer this dark and polluted, and it's high tech. It's high tech in nature. It's a fun business to be in. There's all kinds of possibility and perspective from a youth perspective in terms of moving into this sector and to travel internationally. We talked about most of these manufacturers, and I think it's at the percentage of 80%, they sell internationally. So so this is a very dynamic business to be in, and that's what we need to do and to say and to talk more about with the parents, with the school at all level, with the counselors and everybody that is surrounding the manufacturing ecosystem. So I salute what you're doing there with your podcast. We need to get that word out more and more.
Awesome. Oh, I hope you share your copies of stuff far and wide when they come in as well. Pat, any closing thoughts before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I just also just would echo not only the points that JP and Daniel have made, but just what a wonderful place Eastern Ontario is to do business. So we've attracted some very skilled engineers, for example, from Southern Ontario, that have decided to relocate to this area for lifestyle. It's a 5-minute commute instead of a 1-hour commute. They're not fighting on the 407 or the 401. And they've got access to wonderful natural resources and still have proximity to places like Montreal, Ottawa, and even the United States. So I think manufacturing is a wonderful place to work, and I think Eastern Ontario hosting these kinds of fantastic businesses is just terrific. So I put a plug in for our region as well, Phil.
Absolutely. Sounds good. And Daniel, you folks must have open houses and all that other the college information tour, I think, just wrapped up. But anything people should know if they're considering increasing their trades or manufacturing knowledge with St. Lawrence this fall or winter?
It's great that you brought up open houses, Phil. We have our Kingston open house this Saturday, and that's November 19th from 9 until 12 this Saturday. So,
okay.
As I mentioned, let's try to break the stigma and misconceptions. Let's bring the public into our shops and our labs so they can see that like manufacturing has really evolved. It's really high tech. It's mechanized. It's automated, and that's how we really move the needle on attracting more people into this business. And Eastern Ontario is a place to do it. I mean, we are blessed with logistics capability, whether it's the 401 or the St. Lawrence Seaway, and yes, a lot of advantages. When it comes to access to training, St. Lawrence College, has presence in Kingston, Cornwall, and Brockville. So we're very well situated to grow manufacturing.
Awesome. And, since no one asked, I'll share my favorite Made in Ontario product, very seasonal treat for myself, which is Reed's Dairy Eggnog, which I just picked up the other day. It's, Belleville. So speaking of the, along the 401 kind of corridor. So lots to celebrate, lots to enjoy this fall. And if you're looking for more ideas of Made in Ontario products to enjoy, check out stuffmadeandbuilt.ca or this year's edition of Stuff Magazine. JP, Pat, Daniel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our thanks to JP Giroux from the Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium, Pat Tallon of Tulmar Safety Systems, and Daniel Liao with St. Lawrence College for the great discussion today. Remember to check out stuffmadeandbuilt.ca, watch for this year's edition of the magazine. Leave a comment, let us know what you learned about manufacturing or what your favorite local product is once you check out the magazine, of course. The EOBJ podcast is made possible by these sponsors. The City of Cornwall, the County of Leeds-Grenville, County of Renfrew. Join us again in December, where we'll be discussing tourism. How are the tourism players in Eastern Ontario recovering, and how well prepared are they for the cold and quiet winter months? And as always, for important business news affecting Eastern Ontario, visit obj.ca. Until next time, I'm Phil Gaudreau. Thanks for joining us.